All right, we're going to talk about this phrase, CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. If you haven't written that down, let's go ahead and write that down. But what it means is that if I have something like triangle ABC, that's a triangle there, is congruent to triangle FDE, then I know that they have corresponding parts that are congruent to each other. If I know that everything in this triangle is congruent to everything in this triangle, they should have matching congruent parts. So in other words, angle A should be congruent to angle F. And I know that because A and F are written in the same order. Angle B is the second letter here, so it's going to be congruent to angle D, my second letter here. Angle C is my third letter. It's congruent to angle E, my third letter. So when we write a congruent statement here, order matters. Because A and F are congruent, B and D are congruent, C and E are congruent. I could even mark it that way. A and F are congruent to each other. B, I can mark with 2 more lines, and D are congruent to each other. C, I could do with 3, and E would be with 3, because those are congruent to each other. Same idea with these side lengths here. AB are my first 2 letters. That's going to be congruent to my first 2 letters in this triangle, FD. And that line on top just means I'm talking about a side. BC, side BC is going to be congruent to DE, the last 2 letters, BC and DE are congruent to each other. And then the last one, AC. A is the first letter, C is my last letter. So that's going to match FE. And those are all of my corresponding congruent parts. I can use this to find some missing measures of some triangles and some figures down here. If I want to know, all right, so CAT is congruent to DOG. If I want to know what H is, I want to find the matching corresponding part in my triangle. DO is the first 2 letters here. CA is the first 2 letters here. So is it congruent to the 15 or the 20? It's congruent to the 15. H equals 15. Right down here, number 2, A is in angle H. H is my first letter. I is my first letter. So it should be congruent to 38. So A equals 38. At the bottom, N is 35. X is in that angle R. So N is my middle letter here. 35 should also match with my middle letter here. So the 35 isn't actually on the X spot. The 35 is up in this corner. 35 is up in this corner. And so if I want to solve for X, I'm going to actually use my triangle angle sum theorem. Remember, all my triangles add up to equal 180 degrees. So I'm going to take 180 minus 35 minus this right angle 90, and that's going to give me my final answer, which is 55. Last one in this corner. AB is 21, AD is 3Y. AB is my first 2 letters, AD is my first 2 letters. Those 2 are matching to each other. So I have 3Y equals 21, and I want to solve for Y. In order to get Y by itself, I'll divide by 3, and I'll get an answer of Y equals 7. Now let's see if you can try these two on your own. I have angle X up here. I want to know, does it match to the 98 or the 41? So A, B, D, and C, D, B. So B is my last letter in this one. It's going to be congruent to my last letter in my other triangle. So X is equal to 41. Number 8, DC is down here, and it's going to be congruent to my side up there. So Y equals 7. Last one, we're going to do some little bit of equations here. Angle H is my first letter in this triangle. It's going to be congruent to my first letter in that triangle. So angle I, which is 57. So I'm going to write an equation where I have 2A plus 3 equals 57. And we're going to solve that equation. I want to get A by itself. So I'm going to start by getting rid of the plus 3. I'll subtract 3. And so 2A equals 54. And my last step is to divide by 2. 54 divided by 2 is 27. All right, number 12. See if you can do this one on your own. 3y plus 20, is that going to be congruent to the 68 or the 32? It's congruent to my 68, so I'm going to have 3y plus 20 equals 68. And I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to start by getting rid of that plus 20. So I'll subtract 20. And I'll divide by 3. Which gives me 16. My very last one at the bottom of the page. 35 degrees is N down here. N is in the middle. Q is in the middle. So that congruent part actually goes up here. 35. And so just like I did on that last page, I know triangle angle sum. I can do 180 minus 35 minus 90, which is going to give me an angle of 55. So this angle right here is 55. So 5x minus 10 equals 55. That's the equation I need to solve. So I'll add 10 to both sides. And I get 5x equals 65. And then when I divide by 5, I get x equals 13 as the final answer.